Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Izzy at Minerva. Today I'm going to talk you through how to fit our brand new sewing pattern, which is the Amber Culottes sewing pattern. We are so excited to share this with the sewing community. In today's video, I'm going to talk you through how to measure your body, how to choose your pattern size, how to grade between sizes in terms of getting a beautiful fit, and also how to make some common fit adjustments. We are going to be looking at how to lengthen or shorten the pattern pieces in relation to your height, and we're also going to look at a few little changes to the trousers, specifically around the crotch area, which is often the area that we need to make alterations to with trousers. So stick around and we'll get to that towards the end of the video. Now this video is all about fit. If you are keen on having some further support in terms of how to sew the pattern, we have a lovely little sew along for you available on our YouTube channel. So go and check out the playlist that is dedicated to our Minerva Exclusive sewing patterns, and there you'll find a video with a sew along for the Amber Culottes and also a video all about recommendations for fabric to sew up this gorgeous little pair of trousers. So this is the booklet that we get when we purchase the Amber Culottes. It is really cohesive and it's got a lot of really helpful information. The part that we're going to be referring to straight away is actually looking at the fitting guide, which is always a great starting point. So to start off with, it is definitely worth noticing the style and how the garment has been designed. You can see we've got this lovely little body shape behind, so you can see how the fit is supposed to be. It has a really nice fold down elasticated waistband. The pattern pieces are so simple for this, and there's such beauty in the simplicity of the pattern. It has a gathered waistline, and then it just sort of flows down to midway between your knees and your ankle. It's a very lovely quick sew, and because it's made out of jersey fabric, it's nice and stretchy, so it's very forgiving in terms of the fit. It is worth noting that obviously the length is about 74 centimeters from the waist down to the hem. So if you're wanting something longer than that, you may want to make the alterations I'm going to show you later about lengthening, or if you want it shorter than that, shortening the length of the trousers at that point. So you can measure your body and just check from your natural waist how long that distance is of 74 centimeters from your waist to effectively where the hem of the trousers will be. So let's go and measure our body now. I'm going to talk you through how to do your waist, hip and total crotch measurements, because those are the measurements, those are the three critical ones in order for us to pick the right pattern sizes. Okay, we're going to measure our waist to start off with. Now our waist is where the natural break is between our ribs and our hips. So if you bend to one side gently, you should be able to sort of feel whereabouts that break occurs. So wrap your tape measure around your body at that point and make sure it's aligned nice and straight, and then fit 2 fingers between the tape measure and your body. Breathe in, hand out, and make sure you can run 2 fingers between your body at that point. Take that measurement. Your hips are basically the widest part from your waist down to the floor. So for everyone that's in a slightly different location, it needs to be a nice straight line around your body at that point. And just make sure that you can run the tape measure up and down your body nicely and just comfortably, nice and snug around your widest part to check that that is definitely your widest part. It's usually about 20 centimeters from your waist down to your hips, 22 centimeters. So take that measurement at that point. Now the final measurement that we need to do is actually from our waist all the way around and underneath our crotch. So for this, you need to be really sure about where your waistline is. So I would recommend getting a piece of elastic, wrapping it around your body so you know exactly where your waist is. Grab your tape measure and pop it between your legs like that. Take the measurement and make sure the tape measure is sitting nice and snug around your body. Take the tape measure from your center front all the way to your center back, and that is your crotch depth measurement. Okay, so I've got some example body measurements here. We're going to assume my waist is 77, hips are 107, and crotch, total crotch is 80 centimeters. So let's decide and work out which size we're going to cut. So working along this chart line here, looking at the waist measurement, I'm just going to pick a size that fits most nicely with my waist. Now my waist is 77, the pattern size H is 76.2, so we're really close to that. We're closer to H than we are to I or J with our 77 centimetre size. So there we go. We're going to be cutting an H for our waist. My hips in this example are 107, and my hips here, 107, fits much more comfortably into the I column. I has an approximate hip measurement of 108, so that's really nice and close to that. So as you can see, we're going to have to grade between two sizes for this. Now the other thing that is really interesting is our finished garment measurements. The finished garment size of our waist, according to this size chart here, is significantly bigger than our actual waist dimension. And as it's noted here, this measurement of our finished waist garment size is actually the pattern size. So it doesn't allow for the elastic, which is going to then cinch it in at your waist. So just to finish that process through, for pattern piece I, the pattern piece is going to be 125 centimetres wide, even though our hip measurement is only 108. That's really easily going to fit our hips, so there's a lot of beautiful ease in there. Now my total crotch in this calculation here, this body measurement, is 80 centimetres, and my total crotch here is 85. So actually we've got quite a lot of ease around the crotch area, sort of underneath and between our legs, from front waistband to back waistband, so centre front to centre back. And that's absolutely fine. That may be something that you want to look at and adjust, and I will talk you through that as we continue along with this video. Now, the final thing to note is that our height is approximately 167 centimetres or 5'6". If you are significantly taller or shorter than that, you are definitely going to want to lengthen or shorten your pattern piece. There are a couple of places you can do that, and I will talk you through that next. Okay, we're now going to move on to show you how to grade between sizes for the Amber pattern pieces. There are only two pattern pieces and they're very similar, so it's a really easy process. I'm going to be showing you where your waist and your hips are and how to grade between two sizes based on my size chart that I'm using today. And obviously you can then make those alterations and grade between different sizes, but the principles I'm going to show you are relevant to any sizes that you need to grade between. Okay, so here is pattern piece A, which is our trouser front pattern piece. Now, as you can see on the pattern sketch here, the trousers are actually designed to sit on your natural waist. Okay, so the natural waist on this pattern piece is this line here where the notch is. So very simply, to start off with on your pattern, let's label this as the waist. And again, on this side, this is the waist here. It's got a little curve, hasn't it, kind of going up there, which corresponds with the curve of the hem. Now this notch here, this series of notches, they relate to your hip. So that is going to be your hip notch. For me, I'm going to be cutting out size I for my hips, which is the second to biggest size. So I'm then going to measure from my waist notch down to my hip notch there, and make a note that difference for me is 24.3 centimetres. Working on the other side, on the side seam, mark a point along the side seam which is that distance, and that measurement should be 24.3 centimetres, so mark that as your hip line along the side seam there. Okay, now that we've established where our waist and hips are located on the pattern pieces, we're just going to grade between the sizes. This is really easy. So for my waist measurement, I want to be following the size H, which is this line here. So along the waistline, just mark where the H pattern piece is and just sort of draw that on. And the same on the other side. Just make sure you're following the right line graphic. And then follow that curve along for the waist. Okay, and then very simply, we've noted here which line we're grading to. So we're grading from the H to the I for our hips, so grading up one size. And all I'm going to do on this pattern piece is quite easy, just to draw a straight line between the two, just like that. And then from this point on, we can just follow the curve of the eye pattern size. And then working down from that crotch curve, we'll then just extend it all the way down to the hem and cut out the size that is our hip size. Working on this side here, we already have our waist size cut out, measured out for the H, and then we want to cut our hips at the I pattern size. So at the hip location, I'm just going to annotate which line I want to be following. Now again, we can just cut a straight line, although we'll have a bit more of a kind of jagged point there. So what I'm going to suggest is that we do draw a straight line, but we just allow it to sort of soften off and curve a little bit as it hits the waist. So it's a bit of a kind of softer curve there, and then it hits the hip there nicely. And then just follow that all the way down at the hip pattern size. And along the bottom, obviously, you're going to be cutting your hip size for your hem. So that's how you grade your front pattern piece if you need to grade between a few sizes. Now, as we move on to look at the back pattern trouser piece, this is pattern piece B, you'll notice it's almost exactly the same. It's just kind of flipped over. So our reference points are going to be the same. And very helpfully, this one up here, this is our waist. That's our waist notch. And this will be our hip notch. So just grade this pattern piece in exactly the same way as we graded the previous pattern piece. Now, as there are only 2 pattern pieces for the Amber Culottes, we have done both the changes we need to do nice and simple. So let's move on and look at some other common fit alterations that you may want to look at for this pattern. We're going to be looking at a couple of common fit alterations, and the very first one we're going to look at is how to lengthen or shorten the pattern. Now, there are 2 places that you may need to lengthen or shorten the pattern. The first one might be in the actual leg length, so it might be when you measure the length from your waist to the hem, which is 74 centimeters, you may find that you just actually want to lengthen it a little bit more because you are taller than the way that the pattern has been drafted for. So the body height that the pattern has been drafted for is 167 centimeters or 5'6". So if you're finding that it's fitting really nicely around the crotch, but actually you just need a bit of extra length in order for it to hit the right place on your leg where you think it should be, you basically just want to be drawing a line straight down and across the pattern piece like this, and between the crotch and the hem. So I'll show you how to do that to start off with, and then we'll look at what to do if we need to change the crotch instead. Okay, so first of all, I would just extend the grain line down. We're looking at pattern piece A currently, which is our front pattern piece. We're going to extend that grain line down, and then about halfway down the length of the pattern piece, I'm just going to then draw a line that's perpendicular to the grain line, all the way across the trouser leg. Cut along that line. Okay, so now we've got the top part of the trouser and the bottom part of the trouser, and we're going to assume that we want to shorten the pattern piece. Obviously, if we were going to lengthen it, we could just add volume in at this point, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to assume we're shortening it by, let's say, 3 centimeters. So draw a line on the top trouser pattern piece that is 3 centimeters offset from your cut line. Next, grab the bottom of your trouser pattern piece, and basically you want to align it so the grain line and the edge of the pattern here is just lining up really beautifully. So that has then effectively reduced the length of the trouser leg by 3 centimeters because you've moved it up 3 centimeters. It's looking really good over here, that's fine. The grain line is looking really nice, it's lining up beautifully. But what's happened here is we've got a kick out in the pattern which we just need to soften off. Okay, so we've got another little piece of paper underneath there, and all I'm going to do is basically just draw in a new straight line down the side seam. From the hem, keeping the hem width the same and going up to just above the hip up there. And then just cut along that new side seam so that it looks like that. Annotate obviously what you've done on your pattern piece. So I shortened it by 3 centimeters. Now, whatever we've done to the front pattern piece, we need to repeat the exact same process on the back. Okay, so we've looked at shortening the pattern piece if the area we need to shorten the pattern piece in is between our hip and the hemline. So we shortened it at this point. But what if actually the area we need to shorten is between the waist and the bottom of the crotch here? Now in our guidebook it does have a really helpful size chart here, and it does tell you what the total crotch length is. So we've shown you how to measure that. Now in the finished garment size it is a nice generous fit, and also it is jersey fabric, so it does stretch, but you may find that it's just way too baggy or it's just too tight. So let's take a quick look at how to make that change in the crotch area to reduce it again so that you've got a shorter volume from your waist to your hips instead of from your hips down to the floor. So the area that we want to look at is really from this notch, this point here, up, and we have a lovely little straight line to be working with there. So working from the waist down here, I'm going to mark a point that is about halfway between the waist and the notch there. So I'm going to do 12 centimeters offset from the waist, and then I'm just going to square that across to create a nice straight line for my cut line. Again, for this one, I'm going to assume that we are just reducing it by, let's say, 2 centimeters for this one. So I'm then going to draw another line that runs parallel, 2 centimeters offset from my first line. Cut along that first line. Let's take the top pattern piece and we're just going to slip it underneath so that it sits 2 centimeters lower, keeping the grain line nicely lined up. And we're just making sure that everything is all nice and straight. It's looking great. Okay, and then once again, we've got this issue here where we've got a bit of a glitch at that point. So we're just going to add another piece of paper underneath and then just sort of true up that side seam beautifully. Okay, just like that. And once again with this alteration, changing the crotch depth of the pattern piece, whatever we've done to the front, we need to do to the back. In this video, I've shown you how to shorten the pattern pieces, but you could easily lengthen them by doing the same principle of cutting along those lines I showed you, and then opening up the pattern instead and truing up those side seams. Now the two major alterations I have already shown you, so that's how to lengthen or shorten your pattern pieces. There are one or two other trouser fit alterations that you may need to do, but because it's made out of jersey fabric, the fit is very flattering and very easy to achieve because it's nice and stretchy. However, there are two other little ones that I'm just going to show you quickly in case you're really seeing a lot of drag lines when you wear the garment. You've cut it out to your size, you've graded it properly, but you're still struggling just a little bit with the fit. So here are two more little ones you might want to consider. Okay, so the next one we're going to look at is the full tummy adjustment. As you can see in the image next to me right here, this is where we're going to get drag lines radiating out from the tummy. Now again, you could just size up if you're seeing that issue, and that might well resolve and be very easy to resolve the fit in that area. But if you're still seeing significant amount in that area and potentially the hem of the trousers is rising up a little bit at the bottom as well, so all being dragged up, this is the alteration that you're going to need. So because this fit alteration relates to the front pattern piece only, we're just going to look at the front trouser, the front pant. So using a nice sharp pencil, I'm going to use a Sharpie pen here, fat marker pen, so you can see clearly on the screen. I want you just along the side seam here to mark your seam allowance, which is 1.5 centimeters. Now, working down from the crotch, I'm just going to draw a line that is about halfway between the notch and the front there. So just find a happy halfway point and then draw a line that is perpendicular to the grain line. Cut along that line until you hit the seam line. Then we're just going to cut from the edge of the pattern piece 1.5 centimeters in to create a little pivot point at the seam allowance. At this point, what we want to do is pivot at the seam allowance and open up this at this point here. Now, what this is doing is it's keeping the side seam the same because that's fine, but it's actually just giving us more volume along the front of the crotch. So really, it does depend how much you want, how much extra volume you want, really does depend on how dramatic those drag lines are, how dramatic of an alteration you feel like you need. One way to do it would be to look at the hem and look at how much it's moved up. You can also just start by adding, 1 centimeter, then add more if you need to. It's really up to you how much you need. In this demo, I'm just going to add 2 centimeters. Okay, so mark a point that extends up from the bottom by 2 centimeters. And then just rotate the top and pivot it down until it hits the 2 centimeter line. Stick that down. And then now at this point, I'm just going to true up that seam, starting at the notch up here, which is the natural waist, and just straight down to the notch down at the start of the curve of the crotch. And then just cut along that line. Okay, so as you can see now, we've added that extra volume into this section here, which is just going to give us more fabric to cover over our tummy area. The final fit alteration we're going to talk about is the flat seat adjustment, which basically means that you're going to get bagginess of the fabric underneath the bum. Take a look at the little picture here, and that demonstrates where the drag lines are going to come in underneath the bum. This is a really common fit adjustment, and actually the way that we fit this is very similar to the full tummy adjustment, but instead of adding volume in to the pattern, we're going to be removing it instead. So let's look at this together. So we only need to look at our back pattern piece, which is pattern piece B, and basically what we want to do is remove volume from the back crotch in order to just sort of bring that up a little bit around our bum, so there's less fabric around the back of our bum curve, the back of the crotch. So to start off with, we're going to just draw a point halfway between the waist notch and the crotch notch down here. So that's about 12 centimeters, and then just draw a line that runs perpendicular to the grain line at that point. Next, we are going to draw our seam allowance, 1.5 centimeter offset at that point. Cut into the pattern up to the seam allowance, and then cut along the long line, leaving a pivot point at the seam allowance. Okay, so we've now got a nice little pivot point at the seam allowance right there. Now, how much you want to remove out, you should be able to pin out of the garment as you're wearing it. So pop it on and get someone else to help you if you need. Just pinch out the amount of fabric that you need to remove from the back seat of the trouser pattern piece. And once you know how much you need to remove, just mark it on the pattern piece. So let's say we need to remove 2 centimeters. I'm going to just mark a point that is 2 centimeters below my cut line along the back crotch line. Then rotate this top pattern piece down, pivoting at the seam allowance there until it hits your 2 centimeter line at that point. What you'll notice is there is a little discrepancy, the line isn't smooth anymore, so we're very simply just going to true up that seam allowance, starting at that notch there and finishing down at the bottom notch. And then cut along that line. And there we go, that is how you do the flat seat adjustment. I do hope you found that really helpful in terms of understanding how to fit this gorgeous little pair of flowing culottes. We are going to be doing some really fun pattern hacks with this pattern as well, so do check back in with our playlist for our Minerva exclusive sewing patterns and check out those lovely little hacks that we're going to be looking at together. I've been Izzy at Minerva. Thank you for joining me today. I'll see you next time.